They thought no one would come. They thought help was impossible, but one forgotten pilot proved them all wrong. The desert was burning red. The sky looked like it was bleeding. Smoke rising like scars across heaven. Down below, a SEAL team was trapped. 8 men, surrounded, pinned down, bullets raining, RPGs firing, every second pulling them closer to death. The radio crackled with hopeless voices. Pick any jet, they're all too far. No one believed rescue could happen. No one, except destiny. And then, from the far horizon, came a sound every soldier knows. A growl, a roar, the voice of a predator, the A-10 Thunderbolt, the Warthog. The beast built for one job, to fight when no one else dares. But before that moment, before the sky shook with its roar, there was her. Lieutenant Sarah Collins, 29 years old, height just 5'6" in her boots, hair tied back perfectly, grey eyes that carried quiet storms. She was not the star of her squadron. She was the shadow, invisible, ignored. Other pilots joked, she's just a co-pilot, a taxi driver in the sky. Good for milk runs, not combat. They laughed, not cruelly, but indifferently, as if she didn't exist. And that was worse than hate. But what they didn't see was her truth. Sarah had grown up in hangars. Her father, Chief Warrant Officer Michael Collins, was an engineer for the A-10 Thunderbolt. He died when Sarah was only 17, testing modifications, pushing the Warthog beyond its limits. The report called it mechanical failure, but Sarah knew better. Her father died chasing perfection, and he left her something priceless. A small leather notebook full of sketches, numbers, secrets, improvements that were never made official. Sarah carried it everywhere. It was her weapon, her shield, her inheritance. While others played cards, Sarah memorized maps. While others told war stories, she studied enemy tactics. Preparation prevents panic. Her father's words echoed in her head, and she lived by them. Every night, while the hangar grew silent, she sat inside her A-10, running through checklists, practicing moves, whispering to herself, "When the moment comes, I'll be ready." That moment was closer than anyone knew. The emergency alarm screamed. Red lights flashed. The radio exploded with fear. SEAL. Team in contact. Danger close. Multiple casualties. Air support needed now. Inside the operations center, panic spread. Colonel Harrison barked orders. Officers scrambled for solutions, but the truth was brutal. Help was 30 minutes away. The SEALs had 10 minutes to live. Everyone knew what that meant. It was a death sentence. No jet can make it in time, the commanders said. No pilot would dare. Silence, defeat, a cold calculation. And in that silence stood Sarah Collins, ignored, dismissed, invisible. But she looked at the map. She remembered every contour, every wind pattern, and she whispered to herself, "This is my moment." While the others debated, she walked out across the runway, toward her forgotten A-10. Her father's notebook pressed to her chest. The Warthog waited, not shiny, not glamorous, but built for survival. Engines roared to life. The sound cut through the night like a battle cry. Ground crew stared in disbelief. No one had given her orders. No one expected her to move. But Sarah Collins was done waiting, done being invisible. She was going to dive into hell, and 8 men's lives would depend on it. The desert night shook with the growl of engines. Sarah's A-10, call sign Banshee 17, rolled onto the runway. She pushed the throttle forward. The beast roared, wheels lifted, and just like that, the invisible pilot took flight. Inside the operations center, chaos. Colonel Harrison froze. "Who the hell just launched?" Lieutenant Murphy checked the radar. "Sir, it's an A-10, unauthorized. Call sign Banshee 17. Everyone turned, eyes wide. Disbelief. Sarah Collins, the tag-along pilot, the co-pilot, the one they ignored. She was gone, flying straight toward hell. On the ground, the SEALs were moments from being wiped out. "Ghost Rider, this is Reaper 7. Their leader's voice cracked through the static. "Machine guns, RPGs, mortars, we can't move." His voice broke for the first time in 20 years. 8 warriors, pinned in a kill box, no way out, time running out. He muttered into the radio. "Pick any jet. They're all too far. No one's crazy enough to dive into this hell." His words carried despair. But at that very second, a shadow tore across the sky. The Warthog had arrived. Sarah dropped her altitude. Low, dangerous low. The canyon walls closed in around her. Enemy anti-air guns scanned the skies, waiting to shred anything foolish enough to enter. But Sarah wasn't flying by the book. She was flying by her father's notebook. Every switch, every maneuver, every impossible trick already written in those pages. The SEALs looked up. One of them whispered in shock, "Who the hell is flying that Warthog?" The A-10 screamed down the canyon, and then it spoke. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon. 30mm rounds, depleted uranium. A sound like thunder mixed with a chainsaw. Brrrt, 7 seconds, 70 rounds. The main enemy machine gun nest obliterated, stone, sand and men shredded into silence. The SEALs couldn't believe it. In seconds, the death trap had cracked open. Back at the base, officers stared at their screens. "Impossible," Major Peterson whispered. "No one survives flying that low through that much fire." But Sarah wasn't no one. She was Michael Collins's daughter, the man who died testing the limits of the Warthog. The man whose genius lived on in his daughter's hands. This wasn't just flying, this was legacy. Sarah banked hard, pulling the A-10 into another run. Bullets streaked the sky. Tracer fire arced toward her. Missiles locked on. She flew through it. Not around. Through. Her reinforced armor plates sparked with impacts. Warning lights screamed on her control panel. But Sarah didn't flinch. She whispered to herself, "Meaner, stronger, more determined." Her father's voice echoed in her head. The Warthog doesn't fight fair, and she didn't. She dived again. Her cannon thundered. Enemy mortars vanished in fire and smoke. An entire ridge of RPG fighters, gone. The SEALs shouted into their radios, "She's taking them apart. How is she still flying?" The truth was hidden in that old leather notebook. The modifications, the secret adjustments, the things no manual ever recorded. Sarah was flying an A-10. That was stronger than the world knew. But every victory came at a cost. On her third pass, enemy fire finally landed. Heavy rounds tore through her wing. Hydraulic fluid sprayed like liquid gold against the sunset. Her controls grew heavy. The plane shook violently. Any other pilot would have pulled away, called it quits, saved themselves, not Sarah. She gritted her teeth. Her gray eyes burned. And she pushed harder. "Banshee 17, you're hit," the SEAL commander shouted through the radio. "Break off. You've done enough." But her voice came back, calm and cold. "Negative, Reaper 7. Mission continues." Her father's words echoed again. Preparation prevents panic, and Sarah was ready. This run would be the last one. She knew it. Her hydraulics failing. Ammo running low. One target remained. The enemy command post, buried deep into the canyon wall. It was the brain of the ambush. Take it out, and the SEALs would live. Miss it, and they would all die. Sarah lined up her nose. The cannon hummed, the Warthog screamed, and she unleashed everything. One long, continuous burst, for seconds, a storm of fire and steel. The canyon shook. The command post collapsed into rubble. Silence. The ambush was broken. The SEALs had their chance, their way out, and the invisible pilot had just become unstoppable. The canyon fell silent. No more mortars, no more machine guns, no more death closing in, just smoke, dust, and disbelief. 8 SEAL, still alive. Alive because one woman had refused to accept defeat. Master Chief Thompson, the toughest man. Gern, the team, stared up at the sky. He whispered into the radio, voice shaking, "Ghost Rider." "Who is flying that Warthog?" Back at base, officers scrambled. Murphy typed furiously. Colonel Harrison leaned over his shoulder, and then the truth appeared on the screen. "Sir, unauthorized A-10. Call sign, Banshee 17. The colonel froze, his face pale. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. Sarah Collins, the invisible one, the milk run pilot, the one nobody trusted with real combat, and yet she was rewriting history in real time. The SEALs' radios buzzed with awe. Whoever, she just ripped apart a machine gun nest in one pass. Another voice shouted, "She flew straight through the heaviest fire I've ever seen." Thompson's tone shifted from disbelief to recognition. He saw the insignia painted on the side of the A-10, faded, almost hidden. A small logo, the 5th Test Squadron, and he remembered. He remembered the stories, the legends, the name whispered in hangars years ago, Michael Collins, the engineer who tried to make the Warthog indestructible, the man who died chasing that dream, and now his daughter was flying the result. "It's Collins' kid," Thompson whispered. "It's Michael Collins' daughter." The word spread like electricity, from the canyon to the command center, from the SEAL team to every officer listening. Michael Collins. The name carried weight, the name carried respect. And now, Sarah carried it into battle. Her A-10 was bleeding. Hydraulic fluid streamed behind her like golden fire. Warning lights flashed red across her cockpit, but Sarah didn't stop, couldn't stop, because 8 men's lives still depended on her. She pulled the crippled Warthog out of the canyon. Each movement harder than the last. Every mile she flew was borrowed time. Her father's modifications kept her alive, the reinforced armor, the tuned engines, the backup systems that weren't supposed to exist, but miracles don't last forever. Down below, the SEALs finally broke cover. One by one, they crawled out of the kill zone. Bloody, exhausted, but alive. Sergeant Martinez, his leg torn open by shrapnel, muttered, "She saved us. We were dead men, and she pulled us back." Another SEAL shook his head in disbelief. One plane, one pilot, took apart an entire ambush. This shouldn't be possible. But it had happened. They had seen it, with their own eyes. The helicopter arrived half an hour later. The rescue team expected corpses. Instead, they found warriors, 8 men alive. Standing in the wreckage of a battlefield that looked like a storm had passed, the crew chief's jaw dropped. "Where's the rest of the strike package? Where are the other jets?" Thompson answered with a single truth. "One pilot, one A-10. That's all." The crew chief stared at him like he was insane. Because in modern warfare, this doesn't happen. One jet doesn't destroy an ambush. One pilot doesn't take on anti-air defenses alone. One Warthog doesn't fly through hell and come back. But Sarah Collins had done it. Back at base, tension thickened. Everyone waited, watching the radar, praying. Would her A-10 make it back? Could it even fly that far? The hydraulics were bleeding out, the controls barely responding. Each second was a fight for survival. Sarah's hands trembled, but her eyes stayed sharp. Her father's voice echoed again. "Preparation prevents panic. You've already flown this 100 times in your mind." And so she did. The runway came into sight, her bird shaking, smoke trailing, every part screaming to give up. Half the squadron gathered on the tarmac, pilots, ground crew, officers, everyone who had ever ignored her, everyone who had ever dismissed her, now stood waiting for the invisible pilot, the forgotten one, to return. And then she landed, perfect, smooth, like a textbook maneuver, as if the plane wasn't torn apart, as if she hadn't just danced with death. The engines shut down. The silence was deafening. Ground crew swarmed the Warthog, bullet holes everywhere, hydraulic lines severed, systems that should have failed, still holding on, a machine broken, but undefeated. Just like its pilot. Colonel Harrison walked up to the cockpit. For the first time in his career, he didn't know what to say. Sarah removed her helmet, her hair damp with sweat, her gray eyes tired but unshaken. She spoke in the same calm tone as always. 8 men extracted successfully, sir. Mission accomplished. The colonel froze. Those words, simple, routine, but they carried the weight of legend. The story didn't end on the runway. In fact, that was just the beginning. Word spread like wildfire, faster than official reports, from one soldier to another, from one base to the next. Everyone in the region soon knew. A lone A-10 pilot had flown into hell and brought 8 SEALs back alive, and that pilot's name was Sarah Collins. Her A-10, once ignored in the corner of the hangar, was no longer just another Warthog. It became a shrine. Ground crew touched it with reverence. Young pilots whispered about it with awe. "This is the bird," they said. "The bird that saved them." Every bullet hole in its skin was proof. Every scar told a story. A machine that shouldn't have survived, but did because of her. Reporters wanted interviews. Recruiting officers wanted posters. The world wanted a hero's face. But Sarah, she stayed the same. No press conferences, no headlines, just after action. Reports filed neatly, precise, professional. The spotlight didn't matter. The mission did. But inside the squadron, everything had changed. The same pilots who once mocked her now looked at her differently. No laughter, no indifference, only respect. Major Peterson, the man who called her a taxi driver, now avoided her eyes, because he knew. Captain Rodriguez, who once joked about giving her the co-pilot seat, stood in silence when she walked past. No jokes left, no words strong enough, and Colonel Harrison, the man who dismissed her as invisible, spoke. With a quiet voice full of weight, "Collins, you just redefined what combat aviation means." But Sarah didn't fly for recognition. She flew for her father, for his notebook, for the dream he died chasing. Late at night, when the hangar grew silent, she still sat in her cockpit, running through those secret procedures. Page after page of her father's handwriting, every line of ink and was a piece of his spirit, every modification, a piece of his genius. She wasn't just flying an A-10, she was flying with her father's ghost. For the SEALs, the memory would never fade. 8 men who should have died that night. 8 warriors who thought they'd been abandoned. Now, they lived. Because one invisible pilot refused to stay invisible. Petty Officer Kim, who had taken a bullet in the chest, looked up at Thompson days later and asked, "Chief, did that really happen? Did one pilot save us all?" Thompson, a man of iron, answered simply, "Yes, one pilot, one Warthog, that's all it took." The mathematics of combat had been broken. 1 against hundreds, 1 aircraft against an entire ambush, 1 life risking everything to save others. It shouldn't have been possible. But it happened, and that's why legends are born. The story of Sarah Collins spread far beyond the battlefield. Pilots whispered her name in ready rooms. Soldiers told her story around campfires. Cadets learned about her in training halls, not because she was flashy, not because she wanted fame, but because she proved something powerful, that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous one when pushed to their limit. Her lesson wasn't just for the military. It was for everyone, for the student in the back row who gets ignored, for the worker in the office who's underestimated, for the person told they're not good enough. Sarah's story is a reminder. Your moment will come, and when it does, don't wait for permission. Take the controls. Dive into the fire and prove them wrong. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's refusing to stop when everyone else already has. 8 SEALs walk this earth today because Sarah Collins chose to rise. She wasn't the loudest, she wasn't the strongest, she wasn't the one anyone expected. But when the world said impossible, she wrote a new definition. Sometimes, one act of courage is enough to change everything. One pilot, one plane, one moment. Remember this, your silence can be power until the day you choose to roar.